Hi there, welcome back to my channel. This is Trisha, the Inky Planner, and today I am working on another art journal style divider in my A5 planner. This is a bright, fun, rainbow pot of gold divider for the month of March. So let's dive in and I will show you my process. So I'm going to be using my new Distress Oxide inks and some Ranger watercolor paper on the smooth side. I'm just going to cut that paper down to the A5 size, and the inks I'm using are picked raspberry, carved pumpkin, squeezed lemonade, twisted citron, peacock feathers, salty ocean, and I do think I grabbed seedless preserves at the end of this because I feel like I need a little bit more purpley color at the end. So after grabbing my ink blending tools, you'll see I make a little boo-boo and I get some pink on my page. No worries, I'm just gonna rub it off with a sand eraser, the Tombow Mono sand eraser, and it works great, especially on watercolor, like thicker paper. So I want to apologize up front because I had hooked up my my power cord to my phone while I was recording this, and what I didn't realize was every time I moved my table, it was pulling on the power cord, which was pulling on the phone on the mount above my workstation, so I was wobbling like crazy. And I considered ditching this video altogether, but I thought, you know, there might be some people who can tolerate it and want to see it, and if it just makes you nauseous to watch, I apologize, and I will be aware of that in the future, and I won't let that happen again. So I'm sorry about that, you guys, but you know, you can even skip forward through some of this real wiggly stuff, and it does get better, I think. So you can see I'm just adding these colors pretty heavily in rainbow order across the top of my page, and just working kind of left to right. Here's where I grab that seedless preserves, and I'm going to kind of combine the salty ocean and the seedless preserves at the end because I want a little bit more of a deeper purple. So now that I've got those across the top, I am going to put a little paper towel on my craft mat there and use this mister bottle to spray pretty generously across this ink because I really want it to puddle up and drain in little drips down the page. And this is random. It's going to be different every single time you do it, just depending on where that water decides to flow down. But by putting that paper towel at the bottom, you catch those big bubbles. And then I'm just using edges of the paper towel to soak up some of the puddles elsewhere on the page so that I don't get big rings. So I'm going to speed up the drying process just a bit here with my heat tool and get this set. And then I will come back in with that mister bottle again and just put some more droplets, soak it up with the paper towel, and as if you watched my previous video or any other videos on distress inks, they reactivate with the water, and they the pigment sort of wicks away a little bit, and you get this really cool effect. So you can see those droplets there that kind of ghost the paper. When I get warping, I will dry the back of the paper, and that helps a lot with warping. So that's what I was doing there when you saw me drying the back. So at this point, I do not have a stamp or a die or anything that is in the shape of like a big pot, like a cauldron or even like a flower pot or anything. So I just sort of freehand sketched it. This is not a tough design. You could also download something off the internet and trace it if you don't feel comfortable with just sketching something out. But this is such a simple design, I just went ahead and sketched it. And then I've put a little piece of sticky tape, like sticky side up, just as a handle. And then I've covered the entire thing with Versamark ink and then black embossing powder. And when I melt this embossing powder, it's going to be shiny and mottled, sort of. And to me, it's the perfect texture. It looks just like sort of an old cauldron, or what a leprechaun's pot of gold might look like. So that is going to be my pot of gold. I'm going to make a little line on the back side and use a craft knife to cut it. And then that will be sort of the opening, the front edge of like the rim of the pot, if that makes sense. And this is where I can tuck my little gold nuggets in. So I have this gold glimmery paper. I think this is gold cardstock from Stampin' Up. It was just a scrap piece in my stash, so I'm not 100% sure, but any gold cardstock. And I'm just punching a bunch of circles with my Crocodile We Are Memory Keepers, what do you call that, craft punch thing? I'll link it below. And they do come out a little curved, so I'm kind of flattening them out into discs. And I was testing them to make sure I liked how they looked, but these are going to be my little gold coins or gold nuggets or whatever it is that the leprechaun keeps at the end of the rainbow. So you can see I'm tucking them all into that little slit. I did one whole row all the way across, and I'm just working these in with my tweezers and a little bit of Tombow Mono liquid glue. And I'm making a pile of gold in my little cauldron. I'm leaving a little bit of that black showing behind so that it's kind of obvious that the gold nuggets are inside the pot, or at least that's how I'm thinking it looks. Now I have this March set from Studio Calico. I have been collecting these monthly sets and I love them. Awesome for planners, but great for other things too, for for Project Life, Pocket Pages, or for projects like this. So I am stamping the 4-leaf clover in VersaFine ink, and I am just going to clear heat emboss that. And then I'll use a little bit of that Distress Oxide ink and a paintbrush to fill that in. So I'm just cleaning off my stamp there. And I just wanted to use this little shamrock to decorate the front of my just on the front of my little pot of gold there. So I'm just spritzing, I put a little Distress Oxide on my craft mat, spritz it with a little bit of water, and then I'm filling it in using a paintbrush. Super simple. You could do this with any method you want. You could just color it with markers, any coloring method you want. I did bring out Lucky Clover ink, just as a little bit more of a true Kelly green to add on there. And then later on, I'm going to cover that with some stickles anyway, but I just wanted a green background. So I'm going to fussy cut this out, which doesn't take too long. It's a nice small image. And then after I get it cut, I'm going to use my black brush pen to clean up any of the edges and reinforce that stamped line that I have there. And then I've got a sweet little 4-leaf clover to decorate the front of my pot of gold. Now I want to tie, I've got this big black pot of gold down there, and I want to tie that black in throughout the rest of the page. And I was feeling like some black sprinkles or, droplets would be good. So I'm just using some acrylic paint and some water to dilute it a little and make it a little runnier, and a small paintbrush, and I'm just flicking it onto the page to try to get a little bit of black running through. And that's something that I feel is always something that appeals to me design-wise. If I've got bright, bold colors, sometimes a little bit of black to balance it out really makes everything pop and makes it look great. And you'll see I'm going to end up putting a black border around the edge, and I just think some of those details finish this off nicely. So I'm ready to adhere, now that that's all dry and everything, I'm ready to adhere my little shamrock to the pot of gold there with a little bit of Tombow Mono glue. And then I'm going to use the same glue to just set my whole pot of gold onto my project. And I'm just covering it with some large acrylic blocks to keep it flat while it dries, since I kind of made that thick piece from embossing. So I just want to make sure it stays nice and flat. So I'm grabbing my American Crafts Precision pen in a large nib. I think this is a 0.8. And I'm just freehanding a border around the side. And what I do is just sort of keep my wrist steady and pull my entire arm down. And I don't need a perfect, I wasn't looking for like a perfect straight line. I could have used a ruler for that. Just a nice little border edge. And again, like I said, with that black framing it out, I think it looks really nice. So now I want to get the month on there as well as my quote. And I am going to stamp out the word March. Again, this comes from the Studio Calico March monthly set. And I just love this wide, simple font that they have. And I'm just stamping it in VersaFine Onyx Black, which always gives such a great crisp impression. And I'm just stamping that onto white paper. This is my Nina Solar White cardstock. And I'm going to quickly heat emboss that to make it shiny and bright, just like my pot of gold is. And I'll end up trimming this piece out and mounting it on some black cardstock. So it ends up having some weight down there in the corner. So I apologize that my trimmer is too big for the frame here, but I'll get it back in frame, I think, in a moment. So as I said, I'm grabbing just scrap black cardstock, and I am going to adhere the word March onto that black cardstock in the corner, just leaving a very slight mat, and I'll end up trimming that out so I just have a black frame around that word. And I like what this does for the page, so I'm going to end up doing this for my whole quote as well. I'm going to type my quote up on the computer, cut it into individual words, and then mount it on black cardstock, just like I've done here. So you can see here is my printed out quote. I just printed this on regular printer paper. It doesn't necessarily need to be on cardstock. And I'm going to go down and cut strips for each of these words. If you do this, make sure you leave plenty of space, like hit return a couple of times between the words and leave plenty of space in between. So I'm going to arrange all of my strips, and the quote I have chosen, I just go on Pinterest sometimes. Like I said, I was inspired by the idea of St. Patrick's Day and sort of the magic of spring in general, of everything coming back to life. And one of the quotes that I came across said, "Be a seeker of everyday magic." And I just am a really strong believer that everything is kind of affected by your attitude toward it. And if you believe that everything around you is miraculous and you have an appreciation for it all, then that's how you'll approach your day, and that's how you'll feel about everything that's going on around you. So I think that was what sort of inspired me here, was just that every sunrise, every interaction with my kids, all those simple everyday things are magical and wonderful, and that's how I wanted to, that's what I wanted to be reminded of every time I flipped open to my March divider. So I'm putting all of these word tidbits onto the black cardstock all around the edges, and I am trimming them out so that they all have a little black frame around them and are ready to go on my page. So here they are, all trimmed out and framed out, and I am ready to adhere them. And I will pull out my T-ruler again, which is a great tool for lining things up. And this will help me make sure that everything's nice and straight on the page. And I will just slide that up, keeping everything in place and lining up each one of those words. I am using that same two-way glue pen. Zig makes a great one of these, and this one happens to be from Stampin' Up. I think they're very similar, if not the same. And I really like how this holds very well. It's easy to apply and doesn't, there's no clogging or anything. I really enjoyed this adhesive, so I will link it below if you want to give it a try. When I was placing this down, I got a little bit of ink smudge out on the corner, so I'm using that sand eraser again, which is an awesome tool. It'll even pick up a little extra adhesive. I do have a special adhesive eraser also, but that was in my hand already, so I used that. So I'm going back to another pigment pen, and this time I want a really fine tip. So I'm searching through my pens there, but I thought I would outline each of these little gold coins individually so they stand out a little better in that pot of gold, and I thought that made a nice difference. Little details like that sometimes, you know, you don't think they're not necessary, but I do think they add a lot to the finished project. I've also grabbed some stickles just to make this extra special, and who doesn't love a little bling? So I have this gold glitter, actually I'm saying stickles, but this is really the Stampin' Up! Brand, but anything that you have will work here. And these are just gold glitter drops, and I just put those on each of those little gold coins within the pot, and it really just added a lot of fun bling, especially in real life. It's a little harder to see on camera, but in real life it makes a big difference and adds a lot of shine. So if we're gonna get blingy, we're not gonna stop there. We're gonna go all the way here. And I pulled out my sequins, and I have all of my sequins in these awesome little Loctite containers. I will try to find these and link them below. But I have some that are Simon Says Stamp brand. I think they're called Moonshine. And then I have some others that are, I think they're called Iridescent Sparkle or something. And then some I don't even know the names of. But any sequins, you could get colored or clear or iridescent ones, just whatever you like. I was just scattering those around my quote just to draw a little light and reflection up there in the rainbow. And this white pencil looking thing that I have in my hand actually has sort of a soft rubbery tip. It sharpens just like a regular pencil, but I think it's actually meant for nail artists or manicurists, but it is like a gem picker. They're very inexpensive. I got mine, I think, off of Amazon, and I can link it also. But it has just like a nice soft tip, and it pulls these so easily. You just very gently tap it to a sequin or a bead or a gem, and it picks it up real easily. And then in my other hand, I have a fine tip applicator bottle that I have filled with glossy accents. And so I just lift the sequin, put a teeny drop of the glossy accents, and then lower the sequin back down on top of it. And it has really simplified this process for me. So you're not chasing sequins around and trying like crazy to pick them up with your fingernails. I just have found that to be really easy. See, I'm just adding some additional droplets of glossy accents, some on top of the sequins, because these sequins happen to have holes in them, so it sort of covers the hole. And then some out there on their own, too, which will just leave little clear droplets, almost like dewdrops. So I'm just adding some additional shine. I always like to wipe off the top, and then you saw me tapping down the bottle and sort of burping it, if you will. Just give it a little squeeze, make sure there's nothing in the nozzle. Put that pin down in there, and that should not clog for you, so it's really great. So I believe that this is it for my project. I was so happy how fun and bright, and I felt like this project looked magical, so it was very much the style I was going for. So I just gave that a quick punch with my 6-hole punch and popped it right into my planner, and this I think will make me smile every time I flip to the month of March. So here is a close-up at all the fun color and texture and just that whole vibrant rainbow that you get on this page. I'm just super happy with how this turned out, and I wanted to give you another close-up of the glitter on those on the little pot of gold. I also came in and added some highlights on the pot itself with a white gel pen, and you can see that here in this picture. I did it after I was done filming. I just thought it needed a little bit of reflection, so I thought that worked out well also. Thanks, as always, for spending some time with me today. I hope you enjoyed this process, and I hope that you find some magic in your everyday this March. Have a wonderful day, and I hope to see you again soon. Please be sure to subscribe and like the video if you are enjoying my channel. Bye-bye now.